Scroll of Record, Kolbrin Bible, Book 4, Sons of Fire, Chapter 7 through 14. My belief is they have different perspectives of a time of troubles, starting with invasion, migration, journey to a land of mist, harbor of sorrow, separation, Hezekiah returns, struggles, and a new day. I will be leaving the verses as is, but moving some around to highlight where I think it shows crossovers of the same events, but from different perspectives. No commentary. I'll leave it up to the individual to decide if it makes sense. SOF 744. Isaiah had looked well upon the flesh pots, and his body was filled with fat. He was clad in fine linen from Egypt and perfumed, and Hezekiah said within himself, "Can this be the son of my father and the companion of my childhood? It is truly written in the hands of a weakling, gold turns to fat." SOF 745. Lacue spoke unto Isaiah, and saying, "Lord, I have come far, and therefore beg that I and my servants be given food and drink, and a place to lay our heads. I am a magician of magicians, and a physician of physicians. Mayhap there are those within your household who are sick or possessed by demons, whom I may serve. Or may I enliven your leisure with wonders and magic, and show you strange things beyond the understanding of men." SOF 746. Isaiah said unto Lacue, "Remain with us, for there is little pleasure here. If you enliven our days, you serve us well." SOF 747. So it came to pass that Isaiah prepared a great feast, to which came many lords, with their households. The fame of Lacue had spread afar, for he had healed the sick and cast out demons, and shown many wonders beyond the understanding of men. And among those who came were many who knew Hezekiah. SOF 748. When the day of the great feast came, there was much feasting and merrymaking, and Lacue worked great wonders, so that all men acclaimed his magic. And there were games and feats of strength and dancing. SOF 749. When night had fallen, great fires were lit, and many torches. Tables were spread with all manner of good things, and the guests assembled within the great courtyard. Isaiah sat beneath the tall sycamore tree, and before him was a table laden with every kind of meat. There were breads and sweet things, and spices in abundance, and Isaiah was sitting among half men and wanton women, and with him were gluttons and drunkards. There was much loud laughter in their company, and many sly jesters. There were singing women and dancing girls. There were half men who performed as women, and the night was heavy in the sense of wickedness. SOF 750. The feasting and dancing went on well into the night, and Lacue displayed his powers before the assembly. When the clamor was at its height, Isaiah spoke to Lacue, saying, "Show us now the greatest of your wonders, which we have not yet seen. Let the night be more enlivened." SOF 751. So Lacue stood before them, and lo, before their eyes he changed stones into gold, and a dog into an ass. He drew wine and milk from an empty pitcher, and caused a rod to become a snake. Standing before a table that was bare, he drew all manner of foods and wines out of the air, and furnished it for a splendid repast. Then he called Hezekiah as his slave, and stood a comely maiden before him, and Hezekiah shot arrows into her, and they stood out from her body, so that there was not space for a man to place his hand. And the blood flowed down her robes, as though she stood in a rainstorm of blood, before she sank to the ground and lay there dead before them. SOF 752. Then Lacue went up to her, and after wrenching the arrows from out of her body, threw a cloak over it. The arrows he carried to Isaiah and those about him, saying, "See the blood of a maiden." And they held the arrows and looked at them, and behold, as they held the arrows and looked, the blood went from them, and the arrows were clean. And Lacue cried out in a loud voice, "Lo, the blood returns." Then passing over unto the maiden, he lifted the cloak of her, and behold, as he did so, her robe became clean again, and Lacuse took her by the hand and said unto her, Arise. And she arose and stood before Isaias, and he was silent, and those about him did not speak. Casting aside her garment, which was the outer robe, the maiden danced before the gathering, and all there wondered greatly, for her body was unmarked. SOF 753. Isaiah spoke to Lacuse, saying, How can such things be? What manner of magic is this? Lacuse answered him, saying, Lord, your eyes saw as I bid them see, for I am the master of men's heart, not the master of flesh and wood. The eye is the greatest of deceivers. It is the magic of Egypt which undid the work of the Ethiopian's bow. And Isaiah said, Who is this Ethiopian who stands there so strangely garbed? It is indeed a bowman among bowmen to loose his arrows, so that one has scarcely struck ere another left the bow. Has Rasphamishiel come among us? Lacuse answered him, saying, Lord, he comes from beyond the land of elephants, from the place where the earth tips over. The magic is in his bow, which can shoot at a wild ass and bring down a lion. SOF 754. So saying, Lacuse took up a clay pot and stood it on a table, and Hezekiah, standing off, loosed an arrow at it, and the pot was shattered. And as it fell apart, lo and behold, a silver pot appeared in its place. And those who saw these things were amazed, and spoke one to the other about the magic of Lacuse. SOF 755. One among the gathering, a speechmaker, stood up and spoke words praising the magic of Lacuse. But Isaiah sat quiet, deep in thought. Then bidding Lacuse come to his side, Isaiah said, This night I have seen with my own eyes a maiden slain with arrows, and raised from the sleep of death. I have seen the magic of the bow change clay to silver. Is this then your magic, great enough to change age into youth, and weakness into strength? It is said that the greatest of magicians can do even this. And Lacuse lifted himself and said, Even this I can do. SOF 756. Then there was much whispering back and forth, and talk among those who sat about Isaiah. They that stood in the place of his favor said, Master, this is the hour. Let the magic of this great magician cast the years from off your back, and renew the vigor of youth. And while they spoke, there was much whispering and sly laughter among the half-men. SOF 757. Lacuse stepped back from the presence of Isaiah, and he raised his left hand, and there were loud thunders. He raised his right hand, and fire leaped forth from the ground, and a great cloud of smoke went up. And he said unto Isaiah, Great Isaiah, this is your hour. You are the Lord of this land and place. Therefore, command as you will. Already the night is more than half spent, and speeds to its closing. Hear now my words. This I say unto you. Enter now into my magic tent, which stands strangely adorned, over against the edge of the feasting place. The tent wherefrom I issue forth my magic, to which I return to replenish my strength, when it is done. Therein is the fount of my magic, the hub of the great circle of power. Remain in there until the first red glow from the fires of the underworld appears in the night sky. Then, Lord, I will come into the tent, and standing against it will call forth the Lord of this land and place, and behold, a new Lord will stand before the gathering, in manly strength and vigor, a man among men, and a fitting master for this household. He will be such a man that I, even I, Lacuse, the master of magic, will be the first to proclaim him. SOF 758. So Isaiah entered into the tent of Lacuse, the magician, and as he passed within, Lacuse gave him the great bow of Hezekiah, saying, Take this with you, for its magic is great, and may well be needed. It is a worthy weapon for the Lord of this land. SOF 759. Then the gathering spoke among themselves, and waited, singing women whiled away the hours, and as the first arrows of morning light struck the night sky, Lacuse arose and stood against the tent of magic. Lifting up the door, he cried out in a loud voice, Great Lord of these lands and place, come forth to your heritage. Behold your Lord. And as he spoke, lo, Hezekiah stepped forth into the morning light, arrayed as a lord, and girded about with belt and sword. He wore a helmet, and in his hand was the great bow. SOF 760. The sound of a great sigh passed through the gathering, and men looked one at the other. They were bemused, not knowing what to do, for there was magic about them, and Lacuse lifted up his voice in the silence and cried, Behold, I have brought forth a man among men as lord of these lands and place. Will you not therefore receive him in a befitting manner? And men spoke among themselves, saying, This is one having the appearance of Hezekiah, whom we know, in truth, the lord of these lands and place. He is a man indeed, if it be he. Has magic drawn him back from the grave? Or has the spirit of Isaiah clothed itself in the form of Hezekiah? Then first one and then another hailed the men before them, saying, This is a man among men, if not our lord Hezekiah. Then a great shout of Hezekiah went up, and Hezekiah stood stern before them. SOF 761. Now there were those among the gathering who stood silent, the half men and wanton woman, who were about the table where Isaiah had been, set pale and silent, clinging to each other. They said among themselves, If indeed this be Hezekiah, where then is our lord Isaiah? And a man stood up among the gathering, shouting, This is not Isaiah, transformed by magic, but Hezekiah, who with this evil magician has worked a trick. Isaiah is not transformed, but murdered. Let him be avenged. And reaching back, he took a javelin and sought to hurl it at Hezekiah. But the bow in the hand of Hezekiah bent, and before the javelin could be sped, an arrow pierced the man's throat. Then the bow sang twice more before the enemies of Hezekiah departed. SOF 762. Now it came to pass that those remaining gathered about Hezekiah and rejoiced, saying, Hezekiah is indeed the rightful lord, and none but he ever bent bow, as we have seen a bow bent this dawning. And Hezekiah passed through them to the seat of Isaiah, and those gathered there shrank from him. And he swept the table clean, and drove away those who stood about it, saying, Begone, lest I have you seized and beaten, for you befoul the earth, and serve neither God nor man. They departed, saying, This is indeed Hezekiah, and not Isaiah. And Isaiah was seen no more by the eyes of men. This is a mental exercise, a what-if scenario. I'm not going to argue if it is historical. I myself tend to believe that it is, but I'll leave it up to each person to decide. What I do believe is it can be a great morality tale. That is what I'm attempting to do here. There are myths, self-help books that we can all accept as wisdom or having some value, even though it's not labeled as from God. I see the other religious texts like the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah as having the same value. We argue only over the claim that it came from God. To me, that clouds the real value in all the books. So if it helps, look at this as a morality tale.